Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube studio / bedroom, where today I am going to analyse the song or the tale of Jenny and Screech and Violet. Now, I did a reaction video to this set of songs a little while back that I'll put a link to. Today is not going to be a reaction video, it's going to be an analysis video, and it's going to be a psychological analysis video. You'll know that I'm a psychologist, and so what I really want to do with the various media is pull out some of the themes that are held within those media. Now, Jenny and Screech and Violet's tale, there's a load of stuff that we could pull out of this, and I don't want to bore you for the next 60 minutes, and so I'm just going to pull out the things that jumped out at me, okay? So to recover the broad story, there's a young guy, 14 years old, called Screech. He has been doing drugs with his friends. He's grown up in a pretty rough way, and he ends up attacking someone called Jenny, who was on the streets of London. We later find out that Screech and Jenny both came from the same family, a family that had a history of violence, and that in fact they were twins. So they were both 14 years old. And so what can we pull out of this? I think the first thing that Ren was probably trying to do with the story was to highlight how desensitized we are to violence. I think he does this with the words "what a shame" in that song, whereby a lot of us, when we come across violence, we sort of bat it away as if it doesn't happen. You know, I'm thinking about the war in Ukraine as well. Like, you see news stories that'll say 100 people died today in Ukraine, and you just go, oh, that's bad, isn't it? And then you get on with your day because you've got things to get on with, and we sort of, like, over time we've become desensitized to violence in society, and because we're desensitized to it, we don't care so much about it. We don't try and change it, we don't try and do anything about it. And so I think that Ren was probably trying to highlight that that's pretty sad. It's sad that such violence gets battered away so easily, and I think that the way that one of his aims probably when writing this story was to give an insight into the human beings that are on both ends of the violence, because I think we do dehumanize people when it comes to violence. We dehumanize the aggressors, we dehumanize the people on the receiving end of the violence, because probably to protect ourselves. Like, we don't want to feel empathy with people that have gone through really bad stuff, because that's hard. It's hard to do that, and so we just bat it away and we get on with our days. And so I think he's probably raising that issue of violence. That's the first thing that I think he is was talking about. He talked about London quite a bit, and you know that knife crime rates in London are quite high, so I think he was probably trying to raise awareness of that in the song as well. I think the biggest thing that the biggest question that comes out of the Jenny and Screech and Violet tale is the question. It's the question in psychology, which is, how do people become the people they become? I'm gonna have a coffee while I'm here. It's been a long morning. How do people become the people they become? Now, like, you'll notice that Jenny and Screech were twins, and they came from a family that had a history of violence. Particularly their mother was on the receiving end of violence. Their father was an aggressor of violence, and so immediately you can jump into oh, well, it must be in the genes, you know? So Screech was predetermined to be violent because his father was violent. And maybe Jenny was predetermined to be silent because Violet was silent too. And of course, if you go down that road of assuming that your genes influence your behavior, then you're a bit stuck, you know. They were a bit stuck. They had no choice in it. That was always going to happen. But then I think we find out also that the things that they went through in their lives might have played some role in who they went on to become. Now, I haven't seen the Instagram stories of Screech, but I'm pretty sure that his upbringing was not the best upbringing, and it led him to be what looks like in the moment a bad egg. You know, someone who was more than willing to carry knives and to attack people. But like, how did that happen? Well, that sort of happened because of he was part of a broken system and ended up being broken himself. And then you look at Jenny. You know, Jenny also would have grown up in care and found herself walking the streets of London at 14 years old in high-heeled shoes, which many people think suggests that she was a prostitute. Now, I know that Ren was inspired to write this story because he read a story about a prostitute that was attacked by a 14-year-old with a knife, and so I assumed that was Jenny's role here. Now, what led to that? Well, probably coming out of a broken place. Not just like those people had no exposure to their parents, they didn't witness that violence, but they would have grown up in systems that wouldn't have been particularly helpful or useful for them, or an environment that would have helped them to thrive. So that's the second thing that jumps out of the story for me, which is, how do people become the people that they become? And then linked to that, I think the third thing, which is the most clever thing, which is, for me, the main part of this song, was when you look at the history of events and you see the environment from which Screech in particular emerged from, it's harder to judge him. Like, you see what Ren's costume was like in that video. You saw like the aggression, you saw the graffiti on the walls and whatnot, and you could see how someone that looked the way that Screech looked, you could see that someone who acted the way that Screech acted could be easy to judge, right? It's easy for us to go, there's a bad person over there, and we place the badness within the person. So we assassinate their characters, essentially. We say that person is a bad person. They're of bad quality. There's something inside them that's bad. And then when you hear Screech's story and you see the context from which he emerged, you start to see him as a product of that context. And the thing about that context is that he didn't choose it. He didn't choose to be in care. You know, he didn't choose to come from a family where there was historical violence. And so is it his fault? Is it really Screech's fault that he is the way that he is? Like, I would argue no. I'd argue there's no such thing as bad people. There are people that emerge from context that they haven't chosen, and as we haven't walked even a day in their shoes, how can we judge them? And you know what? If you can take that position that some people have got lucky and some people have got unlucky, and that the unlucky ones, they might present as bad in the present moment, but they've emerged out of a context, we judge people less, and we show them more compassion and more understanding and more love, because we understand that they haven't chosen to become the people they've become. And so our job is not to judge those people. Our job is just to be there with those people and try to help to understand and be a part of a new context or a new environment that allows them to thrive a little bit. Not a lot of people meet those understanding folk, those folk that don't judge, those folk that understand that people are a product of their consequences, and so they just spiral down this big hole until something happens, like what happens to Screech. And like, it just shows to me that whilst awareness of mental health problems is growing up and up, sometimes the messages about mental health problems, especially as being held within people, I don't think they foster the sort of skills in people that we need in order to be able to move forward, which is to have a more empathetic, understanding and compassionate world. I think this story is brilliant at illustrating, look at this person, look where he came from. Can you understand it now? Yes, I can understand it now. It's not his fault. Like, I think it's such a beautiful way of of showing the human being there and how that human being became that human being. And I don't know, I don't think we get to judge people. I don't care who we are, and I don't care, what people have done in some ways. Like, people emerge out of a context that often isn't chosen. Now, don't get me wrong, like, if we come across those people, we have to protect ourselves in the present moment, because in the present moment they might exhibit behaviours that are of threat to us. I totally get that. But I don't think what we should be doing is judging those people as having character flaws that make them the way they are, in a way that does not appreciate the context from which they emerged. Alright, well, I think that's sort of like the main three things that I wanted to get across from Jenny and Screech, like the main things that that popped out to me while I was watching that video in terms of like a more psychological analysis. I hope you like what I've gone for, and if you like these sort of videos, then subscribe and like and do all that sort of stuff, and take care of yourselves.